This is Tell Me What to Read, powered by Booktopia. I'm Nick Wasiliev, and I'm back in the studio once again, and I'm super excited because I have a very special guest joining me today, Chantelle Otten. She's an award-winning sex therapist and relationship specialist. In addition to being an ambassador for Love Honey Australia, she's also the author of The Sex Ed You Never Had, an empowering, fun, and shame-free guide to sex and your body. Chantelle, welcome to Tell Me What to Read.
Oh my God, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be in the actual building because we've had such a nice tour now and I understand what's happening at Booktopia every day.
It's a pleasure to have you. You're very welcome. And it's been fun taking you around our distribution centre and showing you where all the books are going. And I think, given we are a book podcast, it's probably best to start with your book, with The Sex Ed You Never Had. Because we had you on the show last year and you chatted with Stefania and this was just before the book came out and we were all still in isolation. But the response it got was nuts.
You know better than I do. I mean, I'm the kind of person that finishes a project and then I don't really ever look at it again. But no, I have had a lot of people DM me on social media saying how much that they love the book and they learnt things. And it's interesting because a lot of it is just like a basic foundation to your body, sex, relationships. But I wrote it because people needed it, especially my patients. They didn't have that basic foundation. So I'm glad that I'm glad that people like it and it's helping.
Yeah, well, it became a bestseller from our ends. It was huge. And then we have our favourite Australian Book Award every year. And you came in at number 22. People were really passionate about this book. Did the response kind of almost surprise you?
I wasn't looking.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah. No, look, I guess that surprises me. When you tell me about it now, that really does surprise me because I remember the book awards being, I think it was only a month after the book was released was when the book awards were kind of getting channeled, and I didn't realize that I came number 22. That's really exciting to hear. It's so crazy because can you give me some context? What would that be out of 22 of what?
We do a top 50 every year. So this was in January. So it's the books from the last year, effectively.
Wow.
So basically the Australian public vote on which books they think were the best books of that year.
How many books do you reckon come out each year?
Oh God, that's an impossible question.
You should find out.
Thousands. But it basically was whittled down to a top 50.
Wow.
And you were in the top of the top 50, which I think
I'm grinning.
But here's the thing: we also see the debate and discussion around the book, and I found it just liberating. People talking about the discussion of sex. I think in the last.
Yeah.
From my own experience, the discussion of sex in the last few years has certainly become, I think, a lot more open. People seem more acceptable about it than in previous years. People seem more interested in exploring both sex, sexuality, pleasure in many forms. Have you, from your own experience, found it to be that way?
Yeah. I became a sexologist because I really recognized that there was a gap. There was definitely a gap, not just in the healthcare world, because we weren't really that well integrated into healthcare, and now it's definitely becoming a lot more mainstream. But I think also there are sexologists that are a bit more of a different generation, and then there was a gap between my generation and that generation, and I was like, you know what, I need to become a sexologist because who are all my friends going to visit? They want to visit people kind of around their own age, I think, as well. So, and that's not to be offensive. I have really amazing, talented friends who are sexologists and have been long before I have, and have mentored me and been incredible. But yeah, when I came back from living in Amsterdam, when I'd finished my studies, we didn't really have social media sexologists, so Instagram sexperts, and that was something that I've definitely worked on for about 5 years now. And as you can see, there's a lot more sexperts coming up online who are doing incredible things, and the popularity of my work has very much surprised me. I don't know why people want to listen to me, but I also do know why, because I want to learn about sex as well.
Well, let's talk about that actually. Let's talk about, that Instagram online space for a bit, because I always like the discussion and the topics that you hear around just exploring. It's because it's a natural human thing where you will experience and examine your sexuality at some point in your life. So people are always going to be interested in it. Whenever we think about how sex was utilized previously in the past, and then you compare it with today, and what has kind of surprised you about that online space? Whenever I look at it, I just love how open people are talking about the things that brings them joy in terms of their sexuality and their discussions around it. And I think it's quite the discussion suddenly becomes, it's about that this is normal. Like, sex is a normal thing. There's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing to be embarrassed about.
I totally agree with you. And I have like hundreds of DMs that I receive every week of people telling me, either asking a question which I can't answer because I need to know that person and have, some therapy time with them, or a bit more context, I guess. Or they're telling me, hey, like, I love this topic. It's helped me so much. Or thank you. I was, filled with shame before I found this space, and I feel like your Instagram's a safe space. So that's motivating because, of course, like at the end of the day, it's my job and I am an entrepreneur. I am the boss. So you are working like every single day, and it's been like that for 5 years. Well, no, much longer actually. If you include my studies, it's been like 10 years. But, you can get a little bit like, oh, like, do people like this? Like, am I doing a good job? And yeah, that kind of reassurance that you are helping people and that they do find your Instagram safe is really cool. And it's a great way to connect directly with the public.
Absolutely. I agree. There is one thing though, and pull me up if I'm being a little out of, in terms of this subject. But, when I was looking at your social media, of course, like prepping for you coming in, seeing all the stuff that you get up to. And, I was amazed how like some of the discussions around sex, you're going to, whenever you have people on, on a platform, you're going to have sexologists, you're going to have people who sex forms a part of their everyday life. You find really fun ways to get around the whole algorithm.
Oh, I'm trying my best.
Yeah, I know. But I also thought there's something interesting in that, that, just the mentioning of the word sex.
Yes.
Or, the mentioning of the word penises. Or other stuff. The algorithm reacts with it
it's censored.
In a censored way. How do you think that the progression of that kind of that sort of discussion
gone backwards?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
That was not the case when I started my social media. Like I've always had like circumstances where I have had posts taken down or been told off by Insta, but it's become so much worse. It's like if I do a week's worth of content around relationships, for example, and there's no mention of any genitalia or the word sex or kink or fun or whatever, then my algorithm is like, great, like thousands and thousands of likes, hundreds of comments, awesome. As soon as there's like a naughty Instagram word, so like sex or like penis or vulva or whatever, then I get like 62 likes and like no shares and no comments. So they just basically hide it, and it's probably just like my team, my close friends who are liking that post. And that sucks because, it's not just the fact that the Instagram is there to help people, but I run a business where I'm in charge, or not in charge, I'm responsible for people's income and livelihood. And if I start to lose, contact with the general public, then I start to lose bookings from my clinic. And that's when my staff aren't able to get paid. They work by sessions. So if they're not getting sessions, they're not getting paid, and then they can't, live the quality of life that they deserve to live.
I want to ask you a little bit more about your clinic in a second if I can, but before I do, we had excuse me, we had Tiffany Lawless on the podcast, and she's an author, and she's also a queer sex worker here in Sydney, and she often talks about the struggles that
Tilly Lawless.
Sorry, Tilly Lawless. Sorry,
Tilly,
stand corrected. Thank you, Tilly Lawless on, and she talked and she wrote Nothing But My Body, and she made a lot of fantastic arguments and discussions around, for example, topics of sexuality, sex, and consent are part of her everyday work, and that it should actually be brought into kind of an educational space. Where do you think the line? Obviously, social media is still working things out, and the way that they're going about it right now might not seem like it's a bit too hard line with some of the approaches to these topics. Where do we find that balance, in your opinion? Because you deal with this sort of thing every day.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, shout out to Tilly. She's amazing. And she's doing incredible stuff, and I learn a lot from her as well. Look, I think that we're just becoming way more conservative, and I think in terms of the line, if you put up anything that's too much skin or too raunchy, even just, Playboy has an Instagram, they can post heaps and heaps and heaps of raunchy photos. I take a Playboy picture and put it on my Instagram, and my Instagram was deactivated for a week. So there's definitely a double standard. It's, there are some very wealthy people that are behind some Instagram accounts that can really get away with anything. And then there's, little entrepreneurs like me who are just trying their best to educate people. And I have definitely had to tone it down a lot on Instagram. I do take some of my topics off onto a different platform called Sunroom, which is kind of like a platform where you can talk about sexuality. You can show your nipples on there. Like, you can do whatever you want. And I think that hopefully people start jumping on board Sunroom a little bit more, because then you're, able to get the kind of content that you need without feeling, not feeling, you can get the content that you need. It's not going to be censored on there.
Yeah. Okay, so out of curiosity, aside from your book, of course, who else, what other television, book, other sexologists, in your eyes, really nailed that conversation around sex? Who are the sexologists or the shows or whatever that you turn to and go, that's a good discussion of how to have this topic about sex?
There's so many authors that are doing incredible things. There's like Emily Nagoski, and, Esther Perel is talking about incredible things. She is the reason why I became a sexologist. I think in terms of shows, sex education is wonderful. And I'm so glad that show is out there, because it's such a good example for young people, but people of any age. They talk about things like vaginismus, like consent, like sexual pain, like gender identities, sexual orientation. And these are all discussions that I didn't get when I was younger. And contraception, I think that's also important too. So I think that's a really great example. I would say Sex Life, that was like a really popular show. That's not a good example probably of healthy sex, because it was a lot of like rough, hardcore, just, very bad sex with no consent and no protection and hard and fast and, no clitoral play and lubrication and all that kind of shit. So I think sex education is great. I haven't really watched any other shows recently. I'll admit, I've been really busy, so I kind of work till late at the moment, and then I go to bed. So I've been watching Real Housewives. That's probably about it. They're not talking about sex on there.
I'm glad that you brought up sex education. I just watching that show. Kind of when you're in that certain demographic and you're exploring and discovering sex, it's just like, finally.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
You get it. You get where you're coming from, the approach that we're taking, that we want to take with sex. You nail it. You understand it. It's such a great show. I'm glad you mentioned it. Let's talk about the clinic, and talk about the work that you do there as a sexologist and a sex therapist. So what I'm assuming, how can you go into your everyday work a little bit? It's because it's more than just discussing sex and sexual health.
Yeah, so my everyday looks very different day to day. I think that's because The clinic that I run has, it's like one of the largest sexology clinics. I don't know if it's the largest, but there are some amazing other sexology clinics out there. But I have around 20 staff, and it's a mix of sex therapy and pelvic health physiotherapy. So I really want to make my team multidisciplinary, and I want them to be communicating with each other. And they are just absolute angels. They are so switched on. They specialize in different areas. They talk to each other. They ask for advice, and we all learn from each other. So for example, I think in May we did 650 patients came through the clinic.
Wow.
For a session of either physio or sex therapy or both. And we see people of all genders and orientations, and usually from 18 upwards, though some of my staff are qualified to work with under 18s. And, we see lots of different things: sexual pain, desire problems, sexual orientation, open relationships, premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, anorgasmia, delayed orgasms, all of these things that probably we need to talk about a little bit more. And it's in East Melbourne, in Melbourne, but we also work internationally. So we have telehealth for a lot of patients, actually.
That's wonderful. That's great. What's one misconception people often get when it comes to acts of sex and seeking pleasure?
Well, I think a long time ago, people thought that I was a sex worker, which is, well, when I was treating patients, they were like, do you touch patients? And no, that's not my job. I love sex workers. I'm very pro sex work, but I'm a therapist, so I'm talking to them. It's talking therapy. Other misconceptions, I think that there is a misconception that sexologists have to be wildly in your face, erotic, sexy, outlandish, and that's just not the case. I mean, we're just kind of experts who are there to make a safe space for you and really have an open discussion. It's me, the patient, against the problem. I'm really there to work with them. A huge part of my job is also making sure that patient is seeing the right specialist for them, so the right medical specialist that will help them with their concerns, the right gynae or urologist, and also I don't actually do a lot of individual therapy anymore. I only do pro bono work now because that's really where my passion lies, and also talks with cancer patients, talks with trauma patients, all of that kind of thing, because that's really rewarding for me. And I also, am very lucky to work with brands outside of my clinic, like Bumble, like Love Honey, and that's where I can, pay my rent from those salaries.
Oh, love it. It's always cool to see the extra stuff that you get up to. And kind of on the subject of that, can you give us a little insight into what you may have coming up next?
Oh, yeah. So you asked me this before, and I actually was like, I have no idea. I'm so I live day to day. I don't even know what I'm doing day to day. I have to look at my diary before I go to bed and the next morning, and I have to triple check. It's part of my ADHD. I just don't remember. And what have I got going on? I've got a few podcasts that I'm recording, one for myself and another one, which is going to be really special and will, give people insight into therapy and what happens in a therapy session, which will be super exciting. Hopefully I'll do a book tour, because we weren't able to do that last year because of the spicy cough. And I would just really love to meet some of the people that have supported me on this journey and that like my book, or even that don't like my book. I just want to hear what they've got to say. So that for me is something I'm looking forward to so much, because I love getting out on the road and meeting people.
Oh, absolutely. And, it'll be wonderful to see, go out and meet all the people that embrace this book so much. We'll round out with some fun little quick-fire questions. And firstly, I'm curious, you're incredibly busy every single day. Do you get the chance to read? And what have you read recently, if you've done any reading?
Yeah, I have been reading recently. what am I reading at the moment? I've got one book called Bending Reality that I'm reading by Victoria someone.
I have to look that up.
No, it's all right. That's a really great book. That's more of like a book to help me progress as a individual and as a professional. I'm also reading The Eighth Life of Brilka, which I was spiraling one night and I walked into a bookstore and I bought it and it was recommended. I was like, I need to do something. I got Yochi and I just went and bought this book and it's like so thick. There's so many pages. So I'll bring this book with me to Europe. I'm going on a vacation soon. I read The Younger Wife by Sally Hepworth or Young.
I think so.
I read that and that was good. It had a bit of a twist at the end that I didn't kind of love. But I really like her and her writing. I think I didn't love it because of the line of work that I'm in. I just wanted a bit more of a lighter twist. It was a twist that I was like, oh no, this is what I try and get away from by reading. But that's okay. I bought all of her other books to read as well. So the good thing about her books are they are a really easy one to kind of lean into and get into quite quickly. Do
you go for a particular like genre or style? It sounds like you've gone down this rabbit hole of particular books that you're gravitating towards.
Well, my mum is like an avid reader and she has such amazing recommendations and I don't listen to her at all. And it's not that's not because I don't respect or value her opinion. It's because I just buy books on a whim and I forget. I'm very like compulsive with like buying things. So I just forget to like, you can pause, you can ask for advice, you can find out what a good book is. I forget to do that. So I have got like a list in my Booktopia wish list and I do buy everything mainly off Booktopia unless I find it in an independent store near my house. But I've got a wish list of things that she's told me to buy and that like my sister-in-law's told me about. I go mainly for fiction, I'll be honest, because my work's heavy, you know. It's pretty full on.
You need an escape.
I need an escape. And you know what? I think imagination is something that we really need to lean into. We are so busy as a society that we forget how important fantasy and imagination is. And I really want to make sure that I keep cultivating that as I develop and grow and, you know, keep working.
I love it. And I love that you go for fiction. That puts a smile on my dial. And I love that you're also impulsive. Sometimes I often go like, whenever you're out, you're working here, you're like, you have to be on the ball with all the books that you read all the time. Sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I just want to go find a random book that I've never heard of.
100%. I'm like, oh, it's been recommended. That must be great. I'll get that.
And you hear the chat. I'll finish off with some fun little kind of quick fire questions.
Yeah.
What is the perfect idea of a night with a book for you?
Oh, okay. So I have a bath every night and I had a bath this morning as well, actually. I'm always in the bathtub. So if it's not too hot, the bath, then I will read. I also read in the sauna. So I have an infrared sauna at my house, very, very lucky. And I read in there. And those are kind of the perfect nights for me because it's quiet. My partner travels a lot for his work and that's really the time that I can zone in and focus on that. And I always keep the books in my bag because if I am like at an airport or if I'm waiting for something, then I will read as well.
Love it. Amazing. If you have someone who wants to, for example, expand their sexual experiences with their partner, where's the first ideal place for them to start?
I think defining what their idea of sex actually is. Like, do they view sex as like penetrative and goal orientated, so like both partners have to orgasm? Because if they do, if it's like penis and vagina sex, and that's very heteronormative and like you're taking a whole heap of fun activities off the table and you're also kind of saying, well, to people who cannot have penetration with a penis into a vagina, that's not really sex. You have to redefine it and go, actually, maybe sex is about pleasure for me, and maybe I don't need to have an orgasm to have a successful time in the bedroom. So I would start with that and probably ask like your partner what their idea of sex is. I think reading some books would be really wonderful, or just even following like a social media account like mine. And I think opening communication and really going, you know what, like sex is going to ebb and flow over my lifespan. It doesn't have to always be what we see in movies, because what we see in movies is not accurate, you know. It's messy. Sex is messy. It should be fun. It should be sweaty. It should be weird sometimes, and there should be laughter and weird noises. And I think that it is more about pleasure and fun.
Love it.
We need to focus on that.
Love it. Off the back of that, you mentioned we do love Honey Australia. You work with them. What's the most undervalued sex toy, in your opinion?
It's actually really hard for me to answer this one because I have so many sex toys. So I don't know what's undervalued.
Actually, let's rephrase it. Underappreciated.
I think the good old like wand, like a wand vibrator can be used on like all genders, on so many different parts of the body. And, you know, it's just handy to have. You can bring it with you when you travel. They have mini ones, they have big ones, you know, and I think that one's great. And then I always love something like a clitoral suction toy, because you can use that also on a penis too if you just pop it on the tip. But let's just stick with the wand. Yeah, that's the one. I'll go down a rabbit hole.
You get in a lift and the person that you've always wanted to meet in all of your dreams is in there. Who is it?
Esther Perel.
And add to that, you've got time for one question. What is it?
Can we go to dinner together? So I can train your life a little bit more.
I was so tempted. I thought you were going to say, what floor are you going to?
I could say that too. I wouldn't mind.
Finishing off with two more reading questions. Who is more of the reader in your household? You or your partner?
Oh, me. I don't know. I think that Dill does read, like sporadically. He will read a book on his like iPhone. I have bad eyesight, so I cannot read on my iPhone. I love having a physical book in front of me, but he's pretty busy. So I think he listens to a lot more like podcasts and like music, because he used to work in radio and stuff. So I'm the reader in the household.
Nice. And then last of all, classic last question. You're stuck on a deserted island, and while you await rescue, you get to take 3 books with you. What books do you take?
Okay. Oh, gosh. The Bronze Horseman.
Nice.
By Paulina Simmons, I think. That was one of my favourite series. I think I would also probably like to finish this Bending Reality book at some point. And then Come As You Are by Esther Perel, because I love you, Esther. I want to read it again. So, it's been a couple of years since I've delved into that one. She's also got a new one, The State of Affairs, which I have read, but I want to read again too, because her language is like crazy, and sometimes you need to read it a few times to get it to really imprint in your mind.
It's the sort of language where you're like, okay, I need to stop and read that again.
Yeah.
It's the best kind.
100%.
I love it. I can honestly talk to you all day, but unfortunately we've come to the end. We've got to go. We've got to come to the end. We've got to come to the end of this podcast. Chantelle Otten, thank you for coming over to Booktopia HQ and chatting on Tell Me What to Read.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'll see you on the next podcast episode that we do, probably next year, I guess.
Hopefully soon. For all of our listeners, you can buy copies of the books all mentioned today at booktopia.com.au, and I'll also include links to Chantelle's book, The Sex Ed You Never Had, in the description, which you can check out below. We'll catch you on Thursday for our next episode, but until then, thanks for listening and never stop reading.
Thank you.